For our Media Watch, we're joined by our Media Watcher, James Creedon. Good to see you,
Evening,
James. We start in Uganda, a story that we've been covering elsewhere on the channel through the day. Controversial bill to jail homosexuals for life. It's a pretty stiff sentence. It's causing some ripples.
That's right. A lot of reaction in the US media, in French media as well, and in certain African media. In particular to Barack Obama's very outspoken criticism of Uganda's president's recurrent threats to sign this anti-homosexuality bill into law, which could see homosexuals imprisoned for life. In fact, before it was amended, the bill provided for the death penalty. So these are extremely retrograde laws. And it's interesting to see a lot of African countries. Nigeria brought in a law very similar to it last month. You have Europe really and certain US states and Africa going in completely divergent directions in terms of legislation for homosexual rights. But in any case, Yoweri Museveni, some media are speculating that this is all politicking. And indeed, the reason that this has been such a drawn-out threat, he's been making these threats since December that he's going to sign it, then he doesn't sign it, and then he says, well, actually, perhaps it shouldn't be dealt with through the courts. Maybe these people should be cared for in hospital because under Ugandan scientific research, it is a sickness, right? In any case, here in the American media, they're talking about what Obama said. He said he was deeply disappointed, that it was an odious law, and indeed Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor, spent some time on the phone with Yoweri Museveni to try to convince him not to do this. But, as indeed a lot of the analysis is pointing to online, this is politicking. You have elections coming up in 2016, and there's no better issue to rally the troops than a popular decision in these countries, Nigeria and Uganda in particular, to criminalise homosexuality. An interesting piece actually that kind of is relevant to this is an interview with the Kenyan writer Binyavanga Wainaina. This was in yesterday's The Observer. It's being shared a lot since yesterday and across today on social media, on the Guardian's website, etc. Now he wrote a piece that was published last month, an amendment to his memoirs titled I Am a Homosexual Mom. Now, he was imagining telling his mother 13 years after she passed away that he is a homosexual man. A very brave decision indeed to be so public about that in Kenya. And he comments in a very long interview on The Observer on the current situation in Nigeria, in Uganda, where you've got a lot of extremely regressive legislation coming through. He says, listen, your nation is being polarised between Islamic militants and Pentecostal reactionaries. He's speaking in particular about Nigeria here. What is the single issue they can agree on and unite around? Your economic miracle is stalling, your popularity is tanking, and so in your desperation you create not just an anti-gay law, but you close your eyes to a wave of thuggery, beatings, whippings, etc., etc. So, interestingly, Le Monde had a very big piece on it as well today. It was on the front of their website all day long, and they were focusing, for their part, on Cameroon, where a gay rights activist recently, I think it was on the 10th of January, he passed away consequent to injuries when he was imprisoned in 2011 for sending a text message declaring his love to another man. So clearly there is quite a serious human rights situation in several African countries, and quite a lot of stories putting that in the news at the moment, Luke.
Well, you mentioned there earlier too the divergences between the situation in Africa and the situation in Europe. The Sochi Olympics in Russia also causing quite a lot of talk about the gay rights in Russia. Spotlight's still there.
That's right, and there was one, issue that gathered an awful lot of attention in the last 24 hours. That is an Italian transgender MP. Now, she was arrested in Sochi because she was carrying a rainbow flag saying gay is okay. Now, the infamous legislation in Russia is legislation that bans homosexual propaganda. So even as innocuous a statement as gay is okay can be perceived as pro-gay propaganda, right? It's all it's saying really on the surface of it is that it's okay. It's not necessarily promoting it massively, but that's the interpretation of the legislation can be done in that way. So in any case, she was, she was arrested in quite a brutal and aggressive manner, according to activist friends, and it took the intervention of the Italian authorities to get her released.
One of the other stories we've been covering here, a change of tune really, and this is this hijacked plane between Ethiopia and Switzerland.
Pretty extraordinary piece of news, and the detail that I found most, it's not a very entertaining story. This is about plane hijacking, but there are some details that are a bit funny. Swiss airspace, basically, if there's a problem, you better get them during office hours because it was the French and the Italian airspace that had to intervene. This all happened before 8 a.m. and you will ne'er see a Swiss air traffic controller doing anything beyond the strict necessary outside of office hours. As Bloomberg and Business Week put it, if you want to invade Switzerland, here's a tip: strike outside office hours.
James Greedon, thank you very much for that update from everything, from the media and the World Wide Web. You're watching France 24 live from Paris. Do stay tuned. More news and headlines just after this short break.